Right. So, have you ever heard of this thing called autophagy? It's like your body's own, like built-in system for cleaning up and like renewing itself.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing stuff, like a cellular recycling program happening all the time.
And get this, you can actually like boost this process through some pretty simple things,
Yeah.
lifestyle changes.
Really? Like what?
Well, we've got this awesome guide called Activating Autophagy, and we're going to break down the most fascinating bits for you today.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'm ready to dive in.
Okay, so first up, the real like MVP of autophagy activators is intermittent fasting,
Oh, yeah, fasting. I've heard about that.
specifically aiming for a 16 to 24-hour fasting window seems to be the sweet spot according to the guide.
That makes sense when you think about it. Like when you're not eating,
Yeah.
your cells have to get creative. They
Yeah.
start scavenging for energy, breaking down little parts.
Like they're saying, hey, we got to make the most of what we've got.
Exactly. And the guide even mentions studies showing that fasting can actually extend lifespan in certain animals.
Really? Wow, that's pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah, it really is. The science behind it is fascinating. Researchers believe that by clearing out damaged cells and reducing inflammation, fasting can actually slow down aging.
So it's like hitting the reset button on your cells.
Exactly.
Now, the guide suggests different ways to try intermittent fasting. Like you could start with the 16.8 method where you eat within an 8-hour window and fast for the remaining 16.
Yeah, I've heard of that one.
Or you could try a full 24-hour fast once or twice a week. But of course, always listen to your body and talk to your doctor first, especially if you have any health concerns.
For sure, safety first.
Absolutely. Okay, so moving on, let's talk about exercise. Another powerful autophagy activator.
Exercise. I thought that was just for building muscle.
Well, it turns out that when you work out, you're putting stress on your muscle cells, and this actually triggers autophagy to repair and strengthen them.
Oh, wow. So it's like giving your muscles a signal to upgrade and become more resilient.
Exactly. And the guide says that high-intensity interval training, strength training, and even endurance activities are all great for boosting autophagy.
Interesting. And it's not just limited to your muscles either. What's fascinating is that exercise can also trigger autophagy in the brain and liver.
Wow, so it really is a full-body tune-up.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
Okay, so we've got fasting and exercise as key players in this autophagy game. What else can we do to boost this process?
Well, another powerful strategy is caloric restriction.
Caloric restriction? Like dieting?
Not exactly. It's not about starving yourself. It's more about being mindful of your overall calorie intake and making sure you're getting the most nutritional bang for your buck.
So quality over quantity.
Precisely. And studies have shown that reducing calorie intake, even by a modest amount, can have significant benefits for longevity.
Wow, really?
Yeah, researchers believe it works by activating those same cellular repair pathways as fasting.
Incredible. So it seems like giving your body a little bit of a challenge can actually make it stronger and more resilient.
Exactly.
So what's a practical way to implement caloric restriction?
Well, the guide suggests reducing your daily calorie intake by 10 to 30%
Oh.
and really focusing on nutrient-dense foods like fruits, vegetables, lean proteins, and healthy fats. It's about fueling your body with what it truly needs and avoiding those empty calories.
Got it. So it's not just about eating less, it's about eating smarter.
Precisely. Now, speaking of smart eating, let's talk about the ketogenic diet, another popular approach that can significantly impact autophagy.
Yes, the keto diet. Everyone seems to be talking about it these days.
Right.
But how does it tie into autophagy?
Well, the keto diet is very low in carbohydrates and high in healthy fats. This forces your body to switch from burning glucose for energy to Right. burning fat. And in this process, it produces ketones, which are molecules that can actually activate autophagy.
Wait, so it's like mimicking the effects of fasting without actually having to fast.
You got it. And there's some evidence suggesting that this state of ketosis might be especially beneficial for the brain.
Really?
Some studies even suggest it might protect against neurodegenerative diseases.
Okay, that's definitely something to consider. But what about the practical side of things? What can you actually eat on a keto diet?
The guide emphasizes healthy fats like avocados, nuts, olive oil, and fatty fish. And you'll want to significantly reduce your carbohydrate intake, focusing on low-carb veggies and avoiding sugary foods and processed grains. Protein is still important, but in moderation.
Hold on, moderate protein. That's surprising. I always thought more protein was better, especially if you're active.
It's a common misconception, but here's the thing. Too much protein, especially certain amino acids, can actually hinder autophagy.
Wow, I had no idea. It seems like there's a delicate balance when it comes to protein and autophagy.
That's right.
Oh.
And that's why it's important to listen to your body and experiment with different approaches to find what works best for you.
This is all so fascinating. I'm starting to realize that autophagy is a much more dynamic process than I initially thought.
It really is. And we've only just scratched the surface. There are so many more exciting aspects to explore, including some powerful plant compounds that can give autophagy a boost.
Ooh, plant allies. This is getting interesting. Tell me more.
We'll delve into that and more in the next part of our deep dive. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. All right, so we talked about some pretty powerful ways to like boost autophagy, like fasting and exercise and caloric restriction and even the keto diet.
Right, lots of good stuff.
But I'm curious about like what's actually happening inside our cells, at that level. It's cool to know that these things work, but how do they actually work?
Yeah, that's a great question. It all comes down to this process called autophagy. So imagine this. Your cells are constantly creating these little Pac-Man-like structures called autophagosomes.
Pac-Man. Okay, I'm picturing it. So these little guys are like cruising around inside our cells.
Exactly. And they're on a mission to gobble up any damaged cell parts, old proteins, even entire organelles that are past their prime.
So it's like a cellular garbage disposal, getting rid of all the junk that's cluttering things up.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And once these autophagosomes are full of this cellular debris, they fuse with lysosomes, which are like the recycling centers of the cell.
I see. So the lysosomes break down all that waste and turn it into like useful building blocks that the cell can reuse. It's a pretty brilliant system, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
And the benefits go way beyond just cellular housekeeping. This process plays a vital role in protecting us against a wide range of diseases, from cancer to neurodegenerative disorders.
Now that's what I'm talking about. The guide mentioned that connection, but how does autophagy actually help prevent those diseases?
Well, when autophagy is functioning optimally, it helps prevent the buildup of damaged proteins and organelles that can lead to all sorts of problems. For example, think about Alzheimer's disease. It's characterized by the accumulation of abnormal proteins in the brain.
Right, those plaques and tangles they talk about.
Yeah.
So autophagy could potentially help clear out those toxic proteins.
Exactly. And that's just one example. Research suggests that autophagy may also play a role in preventing cancer, heart disease, and even autoimmune disorders.
This is incredible. It seems like autophagy is a key player in keeping our bodies healthy and functioning at their best.
Absolutely. And now that we've got a good visual of what's happening during autophagy, let's zoom in on one of the key players in this process, a protein called mTOR.
mTOR. That sounds pretty technical. What does it do?
It's actually a master regulator of cell growth and metabolism. You can think of it as a switch that tells your cells whether to focus on building and growing or on cleaning up and recycling.
Okay, that makes sense. So how does mTOR relate to autophagy?
Well, when mTOR is active, it means there are plenty of nutrients around and the cell is in growth mode. But when nutrients are scarce, like during fasting or caloric restriction, mTOR activity decreases.
So it's like flipping a switch from build to clean, and that's when autophagy kicks into high gear.
Exactly. And that's why those strategies we talked about earlier, fasting, caloric restriction, and even exercise, are so effective at boosting autophagy. They all help to suppress mTOR activity and give autophagy a chance to shine.
This is all starting to click. Now,
Yeah.
thinking back to what we discussed earlier about protein intake, you mentioned that too much protein can actually hinder autophagy. Could that be because of its effect on mTOR?
You're exactly right. Certain amino acids, particularly leucine, can actually activate mTOR.
So even if you're not overeating in terms of calories, consuming too much protein, especially animal protein, could keep mTOR switched on and suppress autophagy.
That's a key insight. It highlights the importance of being mindful of your protein intake and considering incorporating some lower protein days or focusing on plant-based protein sources.
This is all so fascinating. It really shows how interconnected our bodies are and how seemingly small lifestyle choices can have a ripple effect on our cellular health.
Absolutely. And speaking of fascinating, did you know that research on autophagy actually dates back to the 1960s?
Really? That long ago? What sparked the interest in this process back then?
Well, scientists first observed this phenomenon of cellular self-eating under a microscope, but they didn't fully understand what was going on. It wasn't until much later that a Japanese scientist named Yoshinori Osumi really delved into the molecular mechanisms of autophagy.
Oh, yeah, I remember reading about that. He won the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine for his work on autophagy back in 2016. That's pretty impressive.
Absolutely. His groundbreaking research really put autophagy on the map and helped us understand just how crucial it is for health and disease.
And since then, research in this area has just exploded, right?
Absolutely. Scientists are constantly uncovering new insights into the potential benefits of autophagy and how we can harness its power to improve human health and longevity.
It's amazing to think that something our bodies are already doing naturally has so much potential to impact our well-being.
And one of the most intriguing areas of research is the connection between autophagy and aging. Remember that cellular cleanup crew we talked about? Well, it turns out that as we age, our autophagy processes naturally decline.
So it's like our cellular cleaning crew starts to slow down. That makes sense, I get
And
it.
that slowdown can contribute to cellular damage and increase our risk of developing age-related diseases.
This is where it all comes full circle. So by adopting lifestyle habits that support autophagy throughout our lives, we can potentially slow down the aging process at a cellular level.
Exactly. And that brings us back to those powerful strategies we discussed earlier: fasting, exercise, caloric restriction, and even the keto diet. They all have the potential to help us maintain a healthy level of autophagy as we age.
This is mind-blowing stuff. We've covered a lot of ground in this part of the deep dive, but I have a feeling there's still so much more to explore. What's next?
Well, in the final part of our deep dive, we're going to shift our focus to the real-world implications of autophagy and how it can impact your overall health goals. We'll explore its potential role in brain health, cancer prevention, and even boosting energy levels.
Okay, I'm ready. Let's dive into part 3. All right, so welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into autophagy. We've talked about like what it is and how it works and some ways to boost it.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride so far, right?
Totally. But now I'm really curious about like, what does this all mean for our everyday lives? Like, how can we actually use this information to improve our health?
That's the million-dollar question, right? It's all about connecting the dots.
Exactly. And I know we touched on some potential benefits earlier, like the connection between autophagy and brain health.
Right. That's a huge area of research right now. We know that autophagy helps clear out all that damaged stuff,
Uh-huh.
proteins and cellular debris.
Right.
And that's especially important in the brain because when that stuff builds up, it can lead to serious problems, like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's.
So if we can boost autophagy, could we actually like reduce our risk of developing those diseases?
Well, it's definitely a promising area of research. Our
Mhm.
brains are constantly active. They generate a lot of waste. So autophagy is kind of like the brain's garbage disposal system.
That makes sense. So keeping that system running smoothly is key.
Exactly. Now, you also mentioned the connection between autophagy and cancer, and that one's a little bit more complicated.
Yeah, I remember you saying it's not like a straightforward good or bad thing.
Right. It seems like autophagy can actually play a dual role in cancer, depending on the stage of the disease.
Okay, I'm all ears.
So in the early stages of cancer, before a tumor is really formed, autophagy can actually help suppress tumor growth.
Really? How does that work?
It's pretty amazing, actually. It basically removes damaged cells before they can become cancerous. So it's like autophagy is acting as a guardian, keeping things in check.
Okay, so that's a good thing. But you said it gets more complicated.
Yeah, unfortunately, once a tumor is already formed, autophagy can sometimes actually help those cancer cells survive and grow.
So it's kind of like a double-edged sword then.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And it really highlights how much we still don't know about cancer and how to best use autophagy to fight it.
Well, it's definitely a fascinating area of research. Okay, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about something that I think everyone cares about: energy levels. Can boosting autophagy actually make us feel more energized?
A lot of people who practice intermittent fasting or follow a keto diet, they say they feel more energized and mentally sharp.
Yeah, I've heard that too, but is there like any scientific evidence to back that up?
Well, think about it. When your cells are clean and efficient, they're better able to produce energy, like giving your car a tune-up.
I like that analogy. Makes sense.
And along with increased energy, people also report other benefits, like less inflammation, better sleep, and even better blood sugar control. All of which contribute to feeling, more vibrant.
So it's not just about like preventing disease, it's about feeling good too.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But before we wrap up, I think it's important to talk about safety. We've covered a lot of different strategies, but it's crucial to listen to your body and approach them with caution.
Yeah, that's a good point. Not everything works for everyone.
Right. People with certain health conditions, pregnant women, anyone taking medication, they should definitely talk to their doctor before making any big changes.
Absolutely. Safety first.
Yeah,
And it's important to remember that, autophagy is already happening in our bodies. We're just talking about ways to kind of like give it a boost.
exactly. It's about working with our bodies, not against them.
And finding what works best for you as an individual.
Exactly. So as we wrap up this deep dive into autophagy, what's the one thing you hope our listeners will take away from all this?
I think the biggest takeaway is that autophagy is this amazing natural process that's happening inside all of us right now. And it plays a huge role in our health and well-being.
Right.
And the best part is we can actually support it through simple lifestyle choices.
Exactly. Whether it's intermittent fasting, regular exercise, eating a healthy diet, or prioritizing sleep, there are so many ways we can tap into the power of autophagy and support our long-term health and longevity.
It's all about taking control of our health and making choices that empower our bodies to heal and thrive.
So as we leave you with this newfound knowledge, we have one final question. What single change from this deep dive will you commit to trying this week? And what impact do you think it might have on your energy levels and overall health? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into autophagy. We'll see you next time.